So this is my story about the origin of iLab, and it's really about the evolution of a system that is premised on, I think, the amazing spirit that defines iLab as a product and as a company. And over the past 6 or 7 years, I've come to understand just how well they understand and can interpret the needs of the biomedical community. And really then, through collaborating with the leadership, with the faculty, and with the core directors, they really are able to understand and translate our needs into a product that is simple, efficient, effective, and really makes us all feel as if they were listening to us. We'll start with defining what the problem was and how we hunted for a partner to help us with our problem. And then how, together with iLab, we solved the problem together. Our status report from where we are today, some 6 years later. And then a few minutes looking ahead at the research landscape, because I think that a tool like iLabs becomes absolutely essential to any core director or a vice president for research administration during the very tight economy that lies ahead. Whenever I meet with core directors, it's very important for me to explain that I'm not just some suit, but that I've lived and breathed cores for many years. My very deep passion and advocacy for cores began when I was at the University of Pennsylvania as the executive director of the Abramson Cancer Center. And I learned on the job how important cores were. At the time, I managed 14 cancer center cores, and there were only 15 in the School of Medicine. And while today you're very used to schools of medicine and universities having oversight committees and working together, that was really very different when we created our School of Medicine Oversight Committee. Wasn't exactly something that we were in favor of because we in the cancer centers like to control our destiny and do our own thing. And after all, we had created all these cores. But I learned over time how vital that was. Before joining Huron earlier this year, where we help institutions with lots of different research problems, including building their core programs, wrestling with limited resources, and dealing with multiple faculty needs. For 7 years, I was the Senior Vice President for Research at Dana-Farber. And upon arrival, I learned that 20 cores, in addition to all of my responsibilities, reported directly to me. So I learned very quickly the importance of getting a core structure and a wonderful team that has subsequently worked with Tad and his group for many years. At the same time, I was the administrator for the Dana-Farber Harvard Cancer Center, and we had another 20 cores serving 1,100 faculty, spanning 7 different institutions. And what I learned from this experience was that cores are 2 things, very similar to what John Manning spoke about a few minutes ago. First, they are science, and they are absolutely essential to the vibrancy and the growth and development of the research community, no matter what size your organization may be. But at the same time, they are businesses. They're research businesses, and they need the tools and processes to manage their resources wisely. With that as background, I'll start with the road that Dana-Farber started to take that ended with a solution by iLabs. As an inaugural Senior Vice President for Research, I learned that our leadership had promised our faculty 3 to 5 new cores in the coming year and several more in the years ahead. There had been no business plans, no financial analysis, and no funds earmarked. At the same time, finance announced to me that the discretionary fund that I had, that they gave to us each year, which helped me support my core deficits. I know at your institutions there are no deficits, right? We had a few. And therefore, I had no money to fulfill the promise to the faculty. And this was an institution where you promised the faculty something, right, Ted? You had to deliver. There were, as I started to probe our core program, meet the core directors, one of whom said, I had never seen a senior vice president of research before. What I found was that we had very significant deficits, and they were on the rise. They really exceeded facilities that I had known well, both at Penn and through other work that I had done. There was no reliable utilization, performance, or financial data for me to do some analysis on. And while the core directors were exceptional in their scientific ability, I had never seen cores so supported by the faculty. But often I found that they lacked the traditional business skills and tools to do their jobs effectively. And then, as I noted a moment ago, everybody was reporting to me, and there was no one else besides me in the Office of Research that really understood cores. We had no SOPs, no core budgets, and not even, which scares me as a former SVP of research with compliance responsibilities, really no institutional review of the fee structures. So I had an immediate pressing need in that first year in 2007. I knew that I needed to institute the right kind of business processes and workflows and checks and balances that would help the course flourish, but also control expenses. We also needed to find ways to increase faculty satisfaction and build usage, because with those two things, I might be able to control our deficit and use that delta in my budget to help spawn the new cores that were on the deck. And I had to do this without any noticeable increase in administrative burden. Our core directors and the faculty overall were used to a very close-knit mom-and-pop kind of loose operation as opposed to a traditional university. And they were very sensitive that they didn't want any more oversight, administrative activity that would detract them from helping the researchers. So in the end, in thinking about all of these problems, I concluded that probably what we needed was a core facility management system. But rather than jump right into that and deal with the immediate need, we wanted to really solve long-term problems and long-term wishes of our customers, our faculty, our core directors, and the cores, because they were pivotal to our future. And then if I could serve those two things, I hope that subtly I was also able to achieve the goals for the Office of Research. So first, from the faculty, they wanted it to be easier for them to do ordering, meaning online. They wanted quick information to the different course and their fee schedules. They, for the first time, would have liked accurate, timely billing. They were getting bills after closeout. They were getting bills after months and months of a transgenic animal being created, and they didn't have funds. They also wanted to be updated on projects that were many months in the making. And then they were tired of trying to remember all the processes for different cores, so that they wanted a simplified, uniform process. In working with all of our core directors, they wanted to make sure that when they got an order from their PI, that it was complete, they had all the grant information, they knew exactly what they needed to do and how to proceed. And then they wanted tools to be able to manage their staff and workflow more effectively. They had multiple scheduling challenges, equipment, widgets that they were making, different kinds of things, so that they wanted some flexibility there. They also hated the administrative burdens that they were faced with, getting us the information for our core grant, answering questions from us, and they were each burdened with the manual billing process. They also really wanted real-time analytics so that they could do their job and plan more effectively. And of course, they wanted to be able to customize whatever system we had for their particular needs. From an Office of Research perspective, I'm probably not too different than John Manning and others that you know. We wanted consistent business processes and checks and balances, both to control the vulnerabilities that we had from a compliance perspective and make sure that we were adherent to the institutional policies. We very much wanted to automate billing and deal with a mounting accounts receivable problem and annual write-offs. So that process was very important to us, and to the extent possible to integrate with our PeopleSoft system. And then we really wanted on-demand metrics and reports at the PI, service, core, and institutional level, because that would help our planning and analysis. The only request that we had, surprisingly, from our IT department is they wanted a single solution because they couldn't handle multiple vendors. So with that in mind, we wanted to come up with the characteristics that we were looking for in a vendor. Dana-Farber is not the most flexible environment that I've ever worked in. The faculty are very demanding. The margin for administrative error is this. So we knew we had to get it right the first time and have a partner that we could rely on. That meant quality of product, reliability of the product and the people. We needed to know that if there was a problem at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, that CEO would respond to my calls. Cost was a major issue. I told you a few minutes ago I didn't have any money. Well, I didn't, and I knew that this might be very expensive, so we really needed to find a creative way of getting this done. But the actual cost of the product was a major factor. Organizational fit because of the things that I mentioned to you. And in the end, personally, I needed to be able to trust that company that they would, when they're out with the core directors and the faculty, do right by us. This is my avatar on the top left, because that's how I felt some months in to this process of hunting for the right LIMS system. We quickly eliminated the option of looking internally. Our IT department was great, but they didn't know how to do this and really didn't want to. At Penn, I had looked at a variety of LIMS systems, got more familiar and updated, and found that the market really hadn't changed very much. They were very expensive. They could only serve a few types of cores, and therefore I really wouldn't be able to meet any of my needs. We spent many, many months working hand in glove with another institution that had a homegrown system. After I had told the core directors and the senior leadership that we were going to work with this organization, on the very last day, because of a new vice president coming in, the negotiations ended, and I was sitting in my office looking like that, going, what do we do now? And at that moment, one of my staff, who had been working with iLabs on rolling out the lab management system, which was their first product, he said, why don't we call iLabs? They work well with us. They've been great. Everybody likes them. And I think that what we're trying to do is not that dissimilar from the lab management system. And I said, why don't you give them a call? And what we found out pretty quickly was that they were very excited about the idea. I said that I didn't have money. They said, if we're allowed to roll this out to other institutions, then we can give you a very favorable price. And that was one hand washing the other, and that sounded great. Together, we had all the knowledge to develop the product. We knew cores really well. They understood how to interpret the needs of the biomedical community and create a product that really worked. But equally important, we shared the same values. And Tad and I were talking yesterday that I think that that's what still defines our relationship. That commitment to excellence, the dedication to serving our community, and the spirit of collaboration, which again I think defines our relationship. And if you haven't been involved with iLabs, I hope that when I'm invited back sometime in the future, you'll tell me that I was right. So for us, we had found the right solution. So the road to this collaboration really started in the summer of 2008, and I don't know where Andreas is, but I found an email where Dave had written to Andreas and said, here are the kinds of things that we would like to do. And he wrote back, very excited, this sounds like fun, let's get together. So active planning began in 2008, and we started to conceive a rollout process, which I believe Ted said is really pretty close to what he's doing today. And that was, let's start with 2 or 3 early adopter cores. The directors are excited, they're well run. From a flow perspective, a workflow perspective, the processes are simple as opposed to some of the cores that get very complicated from a workflow perspective. And so we planned and we rolled out with those 3 cores. As they were maturing and feeling comfortable, then we could start planning the next couple of cores, the next waves and the next waves. What was really important to us was to not go rapidly. It was to do it well. And if those existing cores needed some more time, because everybody needed to feel that we were only thinking about them, it had to work with them before we went further. That we are now at a point where we have implemented beyond my wildest imagination. Beyond all the cores, the directors of interdepartmental centers that have service centers have been clamoring to get on top of the priority list. And to me, that's because of the buzz about how happy all of the directors are with iLabs. So a quick status report some 6 years later. High satisfaction, great results. More accurate and complete orders, just what we wanted. Increased communication during the work process between the core and the PI and even the financial managers. Automated, accurate, and timely billing. So I got what we needed to maximize revenue. Core directors got rid of a lot of the paperwork that they needed to deal with. Improved workflow and expense control from each of the cores. And that really helped us reduce our deficit. So I was able to plan those additional cores. And metrics and reports that really were of value for multiple constituents. And as you can see on the right, these are examples of the cores that have adopted on a voluntary basis. We didn't make anybody do it. Again, a surprise to me. And you can see the range from very basic science to population science. From my personal perspective, and Tad informed me that I wasn't the easiest of clients in his mind, because we had a lot at stake. We got the oversight and accountability that SVPs and associate deans need. We reduced manual processes, and that meant that we had fewer compliance vulnerabilities. We got rid of duplication and waste, increased consistency across all the cores without them feeling that it was a cookie-cutter approach. We got data on some cores that I was very concerned about and worked with the faculty, and ultimately were able to eliminate those poor performance so we could invest in the high performers and new cores. Made our Vice President for Finance very happy. We were able to reduce deficits and eliminate the end-of-the-year write-offs. And we were able to institute a lot of metrics and analysis that helped us with our day-to-day review of cores and also long-term planning. Just a few remarks about the look ahead for the research landscape. These are things that are known to all of you. We all know the buzz about the challenges ahead. But there are a couple of points with that. One, I think cores are going to be even more vital to the kind of team research that we need to do today, not just in cancer, but in diabetes and every other dimension. We've got the omics, cytov equipment, precision medicine. All of that costs much more than traditional cores back in the 90s when I started. And the institutional resources that are available to support cores are going to be constrained. That's, of course, because we all live off of the federal pay line. And even if you do get grants, they're oftentimes cut. So there just aren't the indirect costs and the other resources that we had even 5 years ago. And the Affordable Care Act is certainly making a dent, and it will continue to, on the clinical revenues that the CEO uses when he signs the check and sends the money over to the School of Medicine or to the university to support these activities. So the internal pressure to control core costs and monitor and make sure that the institutional investments are wise is going to continue to grow. I didn't plan my speech with John, but he talked about the balance that somebody at his level has to make between faculty needs and wants and the institutional commitments. And that is going to be an even more delicate balance for research. So if you are more directly involved with cores than at the central level, you're going to feel a lot more pressure than ever before to control your expenses, keep your deficits down, while always trying to please your faculty more and more and stay advanced. Both from my experience over 20 years and working with dozens and dozens of cores, and now in my current role, I find that there are 10 secret ingredients to working with cores. And for those of you who are foodies, think about, as you see here, thyme, rosemary, and all those other ingredients that bring out the natural capabilities of the entree that you might be making. And in our case, helping cores enhance themselves and do a very fine job. It really starts with having a terrific director with the right scientific and business skills, dedicated core leadership, and what I mean by that is at the School of Medicine level, the Cancer Center level, the university level. That's pivotal to the success of cores. Clear policies, defined budget processes, fee setting and financial controls, high faculty engagement, continued commitment by the institution to fund cores, both through equipment and new services, effective planning and evaluation processes, good metrics and reports to see how you're doing, stay on track. But the secret ingredient here, and that which brings out all the fine flavors of what I said and makes a core program really possible, is, to me, technology. And you couldn't do better than picking iLab. So in conclusion, what I have seen by being truly on the front lines and my neck on the line at having picked iLab to work with us, that iLab sits in that middle. It helps cores do great science and focus on serving the faculty community. But at the same time, it gives you the tools to manage the business side most effectively. Let me just end with a personal remark, and that is that in 2008, I took a gamble on 3 young people, Tad, Andreas, and Ciaran. I'm not sure that there was a 4th in the company. There might have been at the time. But there was something that instinctively made me know that it was the right thing to do. And some 6, 7 years later, I've never looked back on that decision, but just thrilled to see their success and to see that a product that we created out of a problem that we were facing at Dana-Farber, because of their focus on customer collaboration, is now used in 95 institutions around the country and around the world, and hundreds of different kinds of cores where each of your needs are slightly different and special, and it's worked for all of you. So thank you, Tad and team, and I'm happy to take any questions. Well, if not, I'll be here for the rest of the day and look forward to hearing some of your stories.